avenues are you looking at?
We are urging the UN Security Council as a matter of priority to refer the case of Libya to the International Criminal Court. We strongly feel there is systematic and organized killing of civilians by the government of Libya at this moment. So there may be war crimes and crimes against humanity may be committed at this time. So we want UN Security Council to immediately refer Libya to the International Criminal Court so that they can start an investigation for war crimes abuses happening there.
So you're looking at charges being laid against the leadership in Libya?
Yes, very clearly, because there are so many information coming, and so far everything is indicating that war crimes have been committed.
Now, we've been hearing over the past few hours of measures that are being considered by Western nations, countries in the European Union, the United States for one, and they're talking about sanctions. They're talking about a travel ban, assets freezing, as well as an arms embargo. Are you looking at something more than that?
Yes, arms embargo is the one we were advocating for the last 2 days. But today we decided that things have gone too far, that additional steps should be taken. The additional step at this moment is to make sure that the International Criminal Court open an investigation. To do that, we want UN Security Council to refer Libya to International Criminal Court. That will give a very strong message to President Gaddafi as well as his supporters that they can't escape killing their own people in the name of maintaining stability.
Among the options also being considered by the international community is imposing a no-fly zone over Libya. Is that something that Amnesty International would support? Because it does run the danger that Colonel Gaddafi could use other means to attack people in the country. He might use tanks.
Not yet. Amnesty International at this moment did not consider no-fly zone as one means of stopping what's going on there. But we are under the impression that referring Libya to International Criminal Court will have immediate impact on President Gaddafi's supporters, military generals and others, to desert him or leave him. So we feel this is the first step. And if it doesn't continue, if it doesn't work, then Amnesty International will consider other options.
And in these representations that you are making to organizations like the United Nations, what kind of a response are you getting?
We were happy today that the United Nations Human Rights Council have passed a resolution basically creating a special envoy or team of people to go and investigate to see whether any human rights abuses and war crimes have been committed. That's a victory from the Human Rights Council. In that council, all the countries pretty much supported it, and there may be some abstentions. So we are seeing a positive trend in terms of international community. It's not only the West. Around the globe, international community is concerned that civilians have been massacred by their own country, own government, and that government should be held accountable. So we are confident that if the current trend moves on, we expect UN Security Council as well to refer and start a war crimes investigation on President Gaddafi.
Okay, Mr. Komar, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us. Now, just as you heard, the United Nations Security Council has been holding a special session to discuss potential action against Libya. For more on the options available, let's cross now to Daljit Dhaliwal at our Washington Broadcast Center. Daljit.
Anand, thanks very much. Well, a draft resolution before the Security Council at the United Nations says that the International Criminal Court should investigate the ongoing violence. AlJazeera has obtained a copy of that draft. It calls for an arms embargo both into and out of Libya. The draft prepared by the United Kingdom and France is also seeking an asset freeze and a travel ban targeting Colonel Gaddafi, his family, loyalists and key members of the security forces. It's also warning that the regime's crackdown could amount to crimes against humanity. The United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon says that he's told the Security Council it is time for decisive action on Libya.
The situation remains exceedingly grave. Today we have received further reports of violent clashes with high casualties. We have also further reports of gross and systemic violation of human rights. These include indiscriminate killings, arbitrary arrests, shootings of peaceful demonstrators. The detention and torture of the opposition and the use of the foreign mercenaries, dangerous impediments to medical treatment and access of humanitarian workers.
And AlJazeera's Scott Heidler joins me now live from the United Nations. Scott, we heard the UN Secretary General there calling for decisive action. So will any of these potential measures which are being floated in this draft resolution stop the killing of Libyans?
Well, the design is that they will, but the bigger question is when will they stop the killing? An arms embargo obviously is a good thing, a step in the right direction. Banning travel of those people they believe are the head of this, in charge of these killings, yes. But it's a very good question, Daljit, because I actually asked the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon exactly that. How do you, stop these killings right away? He said that they need to stop right away. The United Nations Security Council says that the killing needs to stop right away. But with what's proposed in this draft resolution, it will lead to that, it'll lead down that path. But I asked him specifically about military intervention or a no-fly zone, something along those lines. And he said that that is not in the cards right now, at least in this resolution. He actually deferred it back to the Security Council and said it's up to them to decide what they're going to do, and he said that no options are off the table, but we know for certain in this draft resolution that is most likely going to be passed tomorrow, there is nothing about a no-fly zone. There's nothing about any kind of military intervention.
So they're likely to take a vote on this tomorrow. Are they all unified? I mean, are there any disagreements, any chances of a possible veto creeping in at the last minute?
Unfortunately, there's always a possibility of that. But what's been indicated to us is no, probably not, because this is when you look at the Security Council and what has been said out of the Security Council, the members in the council itself, but then on the sidelines, that this is a pretty unified voice. This resolution embodies pretty much what they agreed to do. So it doesn't seem like we'll have any 11th hour decisions to not go forward with this draft resolution, thus delaying something. But one thing we need to note is that we've heard this from a couple of members in the Security Council, is that they really wanted to get something done, and they wanted to get it done, even if it requires them coming out on the weekend. And they're going to do that because it does. They do hope that the pieces of the resolution stop the violence in Libya, but also they really wanted to send a signal that they are embodying a unified voice of the international community to get something done in Libya. But down the line, hopefully, possibly there could be more resolutions. But right now, this is what they have.
All right, Scott Heidler for us at the United Nations. Scott, thanks very much. Well, for more on this, I'm joined from New York by Mark Goldberg. He's managing editor of UN Dispatch, a global affairs blog which focuses on the United Nations. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Goldberg. Let me just put the same question that I put to our correspondent. Do you think that any of these potential measures which are now being floated as part of this draft resolution is actually going to be effective enough to stop the killings of Libyans immediately?
The one thing to look at in particular is this targeted sanctions. These are travel bans and asset freezes that the Security Council would impose on members of Gaddafi's inner circle. And once the Security Council says that it's going to do this, presumably members of his inner circle will not want to be on the list that will be drawn up. So potentially that could encourage further defections. And further down the road, this idea of an international criminal court tribunal, I think, is right on target, because it does ensure accountability that the crimes that have been committed will be punished according to law.
But do you think implicit then within some of these measures is that they're acting more like a deterrent? And I'm curious as to why something like that would work with a regime that has reportedly already killed 1,000 people, if not more. And to some extent, if they are a deterrent, isn't that a bit of a moot point? Because people are saying, well, this regime is already disintegrating.
Well, you know, I think that a situation like what you saw at the Security Council today and at the Human Rights Council in Geneva just shows, you know, how isolated this regime has become. And as I said before, presumably the only people that can stop this killing right now in Libya are Libyans, are members of Gaddafi's inner circle. And if they think that consequences will befall them for continuing their slaughter, then they might want to defect. And like, you know, you've seen defections in the Libyan diplomatic corps and the Libyan military throughout this crisis. And what situations, what actions like this by the Security Council and at the Human Rights Council does is encourage that tightening of the circle around Gaddafi and encourage these kind of defections.
What unilateral action do you think that the Obama administration might take?
Well, we know that they're going to look at unilateral sanctions. They announced today that they're going to look at economic sanctions. We haven't heard much about a no-fly zone or any unilateral military action, although I don't think that's probably advisable, considering you know, the fact that such an action might undermine the anti-Gaddafi movement, might want people to coalesce around Gaddafi. Where right now what you're seeing is the fraying of Gaddafi's circle, of his diplomatic corps and of others around him.
All right, Mark Goldberg, many thanks.
Thank you.
And that's all from Washington for now, but I'll be back with more news from the Americas a little later on, including what the Obama administration is planning to do in response to the violence in Libya.
Thanks, Aljit. Well, there's also been some major developments at the United Nations Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva. Members were considering how to punish Libya when Tripoli's representative decided to make his own statement. Nick Spicer has that.
It was a rare special session at the United Nations Human Rights Council, an emergency meeting, and the first ever devoted to a country that is still a member. Libya, absent at the start of the day.
Libya holds one of the 47 seats on the Human Rights Council. In its application for membership, it said it was fully committed to the protection of human rights, which includes the right to direct participation in public life.
A broken pledge. The other country's criticism was relentless.
I think it tells us what we all see on our television screens, that there is a sense of revulsion and outrage as to what's been going on in Libya over the last few days.
The Libyan authorities are violating the universal rights of their own people, and the international community needs to